kind of what God is love. Like
It is,
that's the
yeah.
easiest way to understand what God is. But yeah,
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what's funny about religion is like Jesus really only said two things. You know, it's to love God with all your heart and to love your neighbor as you love yourself.
which
And
I
in
agree
in
with.
those in those two things, you'll feel. I mean, you feel happy from dopamine hits throughout your day or throughout your life. But like a relationship with God gives you like joyousness, which can't be taken from you or given to you. It's like something you already have. It's just something that needs to be like the world just tries to gray it out and like
Yeah,
eat it
you're
out
right.
of you, but like it's in there.
That's why I think my favorite Bible verse might be Romans 12:2. I think that's what it is. It says, "Conform not to society, but be transformed through the renewing of
Hmm.
your own mind." And that's just
Exactly.
the truest shit ever. Like
Yeah.
society
Yeah,
tells
dude.
you, like, you gotta make a lot of money, you gotta fucking fuck a lot of women, but like
Yeah,
it's just
100%.
that's not
My
it.
favorite, 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9 said, "No eye has seen, no ear has heard, and no mind has imagined what God has prepared for those that love Him."
And
As
that's the
always,
wild thing, right? It's like,
you really can't even imagine it.
no.
Unimaginable.
And humans
No,
always
no.
think they're so smart, right? But there's so much shit we don't know. We're like we know a 0.00001% of like what's possible. So
Well, perception, yeah, destroys it all, and ego. But like, I know like that verse. A lot of people think of it. It's like people like they're talking about like heaven, like God has prepared a heaven for you, and that like, but no, it's really a life. Like God's prepared a life for you that you have no idea how great it. Like not in a million years could you ever like fathom it. And it's like waiting. You just got to do your half type of thing.
yeah, you
It's pretty
gotta
fucking.
have
And I've
that faith.
tested it. Yeah,
What do
you
you
do.
mean? How'd you test it?
Well, I've always been a very just like practical thinker, logical thinker, I guess, an overthinker. So, and I've always been kind of I don't know if rebellious is a term, but I just always been in trouble with the law and just shit like that.
Yeah.
But someone who I respected a lot just asked me to asked me to ask God to show Himself, like in a way that I couldn't debate as a coincidence or hoopla or whatever. He said just do it for 2 weeks, and if nothing happens, then you fuck it, fuck this whole God thing, And I was at a place where I was like, yeah, I got nothing better to do, let's run it. And like over that 2 weeks time, you know, just things that I can't explain, obviously things that I would only understand, like scenarios or feelings or thoughts or whatever. I without a shadow of a doubt, I feel His presence, and then I got obsessed with it. I got obsessed with that relationship for like 6 months of my life. And I
Mm.
grew, and I felt serenity for the first time, like complete presence in the moment with complete faith for the future, putting in God's hands, not having any kind of anxiety or um, influence on, or it's not that I didn't care, I just had no concern. I was in the present moment with God and with the people that were around me or whatever I was doing. And it was incredible. It was the shit that I had been chasing through drugs, alcohol, women, attention, fucking possessions, money, everything. That it's like the hole in your heart type thing that only God could fill. And I kind of, and once you fucking learn that shit, like you can't really just like pretend that it's not there, because like again the world beats it out of you. So like 6 months go by and now you're back to being like complacent and selfish and not like you're just really angsty and
Yeah,
just
it's like a
you know how
muscle,
it
like
is.
you said. You gotta
Yeah,
exercise it or it'll get weak. I don't
I
know if
mean you
I've
gotta.
I don't know if I've ever felt that. Like they call it baptism of the Holy Spirit or whatever, where you just have that feeling come over you. Some people
Like
like
wash over you.
cry. Some people like,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know if
No.
I've ever had that, but I've never just asked God to show Himself. Maybe like one time, but for 2 weeks straight, nah. Maybe I should do that.
Yeah. Like and I did it. I did it like halfway cynically, like kind of like
This
in a way
shit's
like
not gonna work, right?
yeah, like yeah, exactly. But I did do it. Like I did it honestly. Like I did speak to what I felt was that higher power. And like it was during that time that I had established my relationship with God was very um like informal. Like a lot of people like when they pray they like Heavenly Father type shit. I go like, yo homie, what the fuck? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I talk to him very because I mean it's not, like it's what you're saying really isn't really what's being described. It's really, your relationship with God. You talk to him on a whole different level. He is you. But yeah, and I urge, like, I don't urge people to do it. I mean, my alt account's name was Disciple for a reason. I do love trying to spread the love of God, but it's something that I have such confidence in that if I were to tell someone to do it, that like I have such confidence that God would show themselves in a way that only they'd understand. Like more so than I have like confidence in gravity almost. Like I just without a shadow of a doubt I know that you will find them if you search, without a doubt. And it's only because I was a cynical smart ass who fucking did it myself. And then I've seen just I don't know how many people that were just like me do it and find them. And that's just the beginning though. Once you know he's there, then you have to deal with like, well, fuck. Now I have this. You have like something else to own up to, right? Like life is almost easier. Like ignorance is bliss type of scenario.
Yeah, you gotta. It's like whenever you do bad things, you're gonna feel guilty for it now, like, because like, you're gonna get judged for it. No.
Well, yeah, it's not even that, right? Because like my relationship with my God, it's like I'm a sinner and I've already been absolved of all my sins. So I'm actually like kind of expressing my faith by being a sinner. So I don't feel guilt. I feel stupid because I know that if I live by just the two simple things of loving God with all my heart and loving my neighbor as I love myself, if I just did that, my life would be so fucking legit. And it wouldn't even be matter what my life would be like, because I would no longer I wouldn't need a Range Rover anymore. I wouldn't need X, Y, and Z, and that's where like the whole idea of like a life that you can't fathom comes from, because once you find that you can only keep something by giving it away, like love and faith and everything. It's you realize that like everything you've desired, you no longer even desire it, so you don't even know what your life is going to be like, but you do know that you're just at peace, or content,
Yeah. That's how I wish I
Just-
could be. Wish I could just have inner joy, like, and just have the feeling of, everything's gonna be alright, and I should,
yeah.
because, like, I mean, have faith in God, I try my best to be a good person, so I should think, God will take care of me in the end. But, I don't know, it's like I get distracted from that. It's like the world pulls you away from that.
It does, absolutely does, because you're no longer an asset to the world if you become. It's like it's being released from the bondage of self. You are your own worst enemy, and the world wants to emphasize that to make you feel like you need these things that you don't need, because the only thing you need, you already have it. It's just a matter of digging it up, and that's like so scary to a society that controls by desire. If you no longer
Mm-hmm.
desire what they have to offer, then they can no longer
Control
predict what you're
you.
gonna do, control you exactly. Like you become like a wild card, And that's like the beginning of like organized religion and manipulation, and a lot of that stuff is the power that comes with giving serenity or giving freedom, to people. Like, it's what a church is doing. They're like hustling freedom, like freedom of the soul and the mind and everything. That's amazing, but it comes with a lot of stipulations that aren't necessarily real in my mind. Like, that's why like I asked you like how you felt in church, because it makes me sad when even me like, and I consider myself like I read my Bible. I'm probably more disciplined than some, but a lot less disciplined than some too, you know. But
Yeah.
I just have no guilt, is what it is. Like I know my relationship with my God, and he, I feel proud, you know. So I have nothing to be worried about. But I still feel shitty going to church. You know what I mean? Like it's just I feel like guys are
Yeah.
looking at me and like they like I'm not doing the God thing right or whatever. And
Yeah.
it's just not real. It's
Yeah, it is pretty, can be pretty judgmental for sure, but like it doesn't make sense because like if these people in church are really following what God says, then you shouldn't judge people, you know?
yeah, and you can see the people in church or the people just of faith that have reached that level of relationship because they have a glow to them. It's like a lightness in their voice, a lightness in their presence. Like when you're standing next to them, you can almost feel this warmth or see this glow to them, and that's the joyousness that they've reached. You know, I knew this lady who's was just incredible. Like I mean, I loved hearing her talk about God. I loved her when she'd do a sermon. I loved, you know, and just sitting next to her, it felt like I was sitting next to my own mother. You know, like just so comforted and I could tell there wasn't a single bit of judgment in her heart, just pure love for everybody around her, everybody. She didn't have to know him, but she just, you know, and she was a huge influence in like on me during this time when I got super obsessed with trying to create this relationship. And yeah, it's something that like I try to turn back to, is to have that like that warmth, you know, that glow,
Yeah.
because it's like when people, it does so much good, like passively to the people around you and to yourself, obviously. But you know,
It's,
it's also like when you're angsty, you kind of create anxiety around you. It's like when you hold a baby and you're
yeah,
really stressed out and they start crying.
see, I'm kind of better at feeling that side of it. Like, you gotta be pretty clairvoyant to just kind of feel somebody's aura type deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like maybe I struggle with feeling the good aura because, like, I mean, for example, when I was there, there's this guy who was just looking at me in such a way, and I could just tell it was like not a. Like, it just made me feel off. It was just dragging me down, and I didn't know what he's thinking, but just seeing the way that he was looking at me, I don't know, maybe it's because I have long hair or something. Like,
Well, the problem is in like the question type of thing. Like, there's a book you have to read that I used to give out Bibles to like addicts, you know, that were or people that are incarcerated and stuff. But
yeah,
I'd also give them another book, which the church didn't really like that I did that because they want the Bible to be the cornerstone of any kind of religious reading, which makes sense, whatever. But I would give The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, because like the power of now, like especially like, you know, drug addicts or people that have been trying to fill the hole in their heart through like radical means, you know, uh, they are they they're just more pessimistic to the whole world and to the idea of a God, because they felt like they've been cast out and unlucky and whatever, you know what I mean? And but the power now, like it teaches you that the biggest enemy against your your joyousness that's inside you, your God that's already inside you, is your mind. That the mind is a tool created by evolution to protect you from the world. So the mind isn't supposed to think of things positive, think of things as good. It's supposed to take anything and find the danger in it, find
you're right.
the aspects to it that may harm you in the future or whatever. And it's that exact thing that's pulling you from being present, because now you have fear of the future because you're being judged or whatever, right? And but so it's called the power now, because if you can be in the complete moment is where you'll find God. It'll come flooding over you, like they say, you know, because it's in that moment. It's having faith, but it's in that moment you're not thinking about, you're not regretting the past or anxious for the future. You're so in the present that like the sounds around you get soundier and the lights get brighter, and because you're actually there, you're there in that moment, and that moment is only that moment, and God is in that moment with you. you know, but it's when your mind is running and it's like, fuck, dude, I got work tomorrow and that chick doesn't text me back and the fucking X, Y, and Z,
Yeah, I feel that.
and it's just, it's meant to do that. So what the book teaches you to do is to look at your mind as something outside of yourself, that
You know,
it's not you,
what
it's
you're
the tool.
describing right now, it really reminds me of my experiences on shrooms. And
Exactly.
it's pretty ironic, but I feel like whenever I've felt God the most is when I was tripping, like
Mm-hmm.
balls, because you are just in the moment, and
Yeah.
you get thoughts of like, man, the world really is a beautiful place, and you get so
They're at
caught
a
up.
tree.
And yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You just stare at a tree and tripping out on the bark. It's like, holy shit, this thing was
Well, you
been
can see it
growing.
breathing. You can feel the life in it.
It
You can feel
you
the
can.
energy.
It's
Yeah, you could.
nuts.
It's like looking at another human, and like, you've been looking at this tree for years, driving by it, and it's just a fucking tree. And now it's like it's like you're in the presence of a living being, you know. And it's exactly what it is. I've always said that like shrooms were like they removed the goggles of life for a moment, and you got to see the
Yeah.
world for what it really is, like the real world.
And it
And
does,
then,
it kind of lets you step out of yourself, so to speak,
hmm
like, and look at things from a totally different perception.
well, I don't think it's even a different perception. I think it's the true perception, right? Because everybody sees and feels the same thing when they eat mushrooms mainly, and that consistency of it makes me feel that like that's the way the world really is. But what the way we see it like right now is we have like our ego goggles are filtering out the world, and then like our anxiety goggles are filtering it out, and then what we see is just this, whatever our life is at that moment, but it's being filtered through all this bullshit, so
Hmm.
it's being able to take those goggles off, or you can know the goggles are there and disregard what you're really seeing and just knowing what is underneath or really there. But yeah, it's exactly like mushrooms. I just don't like to bring up that aspect of it because then I feel like it taints the whole.
Yeah, it's
Um,
really questionable.
yeah,
I mean, to somebody who's never done them before, they're just gonna be, oh, you're just out of your mind, you're just hallucinating. But
well, yeah, you're just like a druggy type shit.
yeah.
But I mean, I have like an eighth of them right next to me always. Like I fucking like well yeah, like I'll just eat a cap whenever I'm starting to feel like I'm too much in the future or too much in the past mentally. And I mean, I don't eat enough to start tripping, like walking outside and shit. Like I'll just be playing the game or something. And I notice my breaths get like more full out, like full of oxygen, and my blood, my blood pressure goes down, and then I realize that, then I'm able to look at my mind as an external being. I think of it, my mind as like a calculator. Like I only use the calculator when I need to solve a problem. If I'm not solving a problem, the calculator doesn't need to be pulled out. We can keep the calculator over there, and when a problem arises, we'll pull the calculator out and solve it. And that's basically what your mind is. Problem is, our minds are always on until we learn how to shut them off. Or you don't ever shut off your mind, but you learn to disregard it.
You can get into sort of like a flow state where you're not really thinking, you're kind of just acting, you know?
Yeah, in a sense, like Eckhart Tolle, he takes you through the book in a really, really incredible way, to where you start out with baby steps of first understanding your mind and understanding like what an emotion is. Like, an emotion, he describes them as kind of like the tide. You can't control an emotion that arises from a scenario. It happens. Now, like, you can either give credibility to that emotion, or you can just see it for what it is and just kind of move on with no tie to it. This is where like jealousy or guilt would come in or stuff like that. And again, you just disregard it because emotions aren't necessarily a real thing. It's your ego and your expectations are what create emotions. So like when you're disappointed, when you're sad or whatever, it's because you had an expectation for some other outcome,
Yeah,
which
because
is
like one person can go through a day and think it's the worst day ever. Then another person can go through the same exact day and think it's the best day ever. It's all just in your mind,
exactly.
really.
Well, yeah, and it's something I tell people a lot is like the worst thing that ever happened to somebody is the worst thing that ever happened to them. It doesn't matter if it's the worst thing that happened to somebody was they didn't get a BMW on their birthday, and then another person's worst thing that ever happened to them is their child died. It's still the worst thing that's ever happened to them. You know, we can't judge as to what level of worst is because it just is the worst to that person, and it has the same impact on them. Rather, you know, in the eyes of you know, one person's problems or worst thing that ever happened to them is super petty and super like shallow, but it doesn't matter because the pain is still real, you know, or not real, but perceived, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's where like once that's understood, that's where like true, like common understanding of other people it begins. When we stop trying to
Empathy.
compare. Yeah, yeah, and they say empathy is the only thing that differentiates us from animals, right? Animals don't have the ability to empathize, um, but humans do. And when you add the ability to empathize, that's where like society basically gets created. Because then we can trust being around each other because we can empathize with the pain that would be caused if we were to harm each other or steal from each other or not live as a coexisting society, you know?
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a really good book, and it's, you know, like then you start to read things from Paul, like in, you know, the New Testament after getting through the Power of Now, and all of a sudden like verses and stuff. Well, I mean, the Bible, I mean, it is the living Word of God. So every time you read a verse, it's gonna present itself to you differently because it is living. But you read like the Power of Now, and you start to, over time, you'll notice that you're starting to disconnect from your mind, and you start to find peace more. And then you'll read the Bible in tandem with it, and it's just it washes over you in a whole new sense. Like it all makes sense, and it's like, you know, I used to read it, and I'd just be like, I'd read it because I was always taught that discipline is love. You know, so the way you show love to God is by being disciplined.
Yeah, like being
And
obedient.
exactly. Well, yeah, I think they use like the parable of like the bit in the horse's mouth, you know, or whatever, and obeying, you know, that yeah, just and it is true, like obeying or being disciplined to anybody is, I think, probably the ultimate way to show love for them, you know. But yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say. Anyway.